Welcome to the Haunted 365. In this video we're going to make a Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Speak No Evil decoration using Dollar Tree skeleton garland. You only need minimal supplies for this project, and all you really need is the Dollar Tree skeleton garland, a razor knife, some various paints. In this case we're just using black and white, a brush, some super glue gel, and a El Cheapo hot glue gun. We're only going to need 3 of these skeletons for this project, so you can always reserve one back and maybe practice on it first before you start to work on the other 3. So we'll just put this guy to the side. And we don't need this loop on the top or the string, so I'm just going to use my razor knife to remove it on all 3. Now I'm just carefully going to use the razor knife to remove the little pieces that are left behind when you cut that off, so that way it's relatively smooth on top. Try not to cut yourself, obviously. And I'm going to go around the whole skeleton and find little spots where it was injection molded, and I'm going to cut those off. And I'm just going to do that all the way around, anywhere I find them, to all 3 of these guys. And I'm going to go around these and everywhere where they have painted them with whatever this dark brown stuff is. It's kind of plasticky. You can find globs of it here and there. I'm just going to try to pick that off of there. They just kind of got it all over the place, and it just pretty much falls off anyway. The only joints that have any articulation on this thing is kind of the head a little bit, and mainly the legs at the hip. Everything else is completely fixed and stiff. So the first thing we got to do is make some joints. Not that kind of joint. To get the legs to bend the way I want them to, so that way this guy can kind of sit on the ledge of something, I'm just going to take the razor knife and just go over the back of this joint a couple times on both sides, or both legs. And now I'm going to flip him over and do the same thing on the front of the joint, except I'm only going to do it once. Being very careful not to amputate his leg. Now we should be able to get a nice bend in these legs, because they'll want to bend at that joint now. We wouldn't have any trouble making him sit on a ledge. So now to address the arms, which are going to be a little more tricky. In order to get these arms the way I want them to go, I'm just going to lop it off at the elbow, and again at the shoulder joint. I'm going to make this first guy the See No Evil, so I'm going to take the part with his hand on it, make sure the thumb is facing up, so you want it to be, anatomically correct. And I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just put a nice glob right on his eye socket, and then immediately squash that hand into it. And I'm going to sit here and hold this for about 30 seconds. Alright, now that that's dry enough to hold it in place, I'm going to back it up to make it have a little more strength with this gel super glue. I'm just going to touch it here and there, or try to get it where it's making contact. And especially from the back side, I'm going to put quite a bit. And then just try to smooth it out a little bit so it's not just some big glob. All right, now I'm going to let that dry for about a minute and a half or two. Now the tricky part here is I have to get this bone in between that lower part of his arm and his shoulder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to vaguely hold it on the shoulder where I want it to go, but pay more attention to where this is meeting up right here. It's especially hard to do with one hand. But once I got it exactly where I want it, I'm just going to put a glob of glue right here. I'm just going to let that sit and dry for a few seconds. And don't worry about all the little strings and all that crap that kind of comes off the hot glue, because you can always just pick that off afterwards, or you can leave it there and call it cobwebs. Your choice. Alright, that's dry enough that it's holding itself in place, so now I'm going to go on the back side here and back that up with a nice glob of super glue. And then kind of spread it out so it isn't so globular. And let that dry a couple minutes. Alright, now that everything's dry so far, I'm just going to hold the bottom part of his arm here up to that shoulder joint exactly where I want it, and do the exact same process with the glob of glue. Let it dry, and then back it up with some super glue. Now I'm just going to repeat this whole process on the other side with the other arm. Alright, now that that guy's done, we'll move on, and I guess next we'll do Hear No Evil. We'll start off with the same process as before by cutting off these arms at the joint. And again at the shoulder joint. Now to get these onto the side of the head, we're going to have to get this wrist to bend at the joint, so that way they're not just stiff and stuck to the side of the body like that. They can actually have the elbows out. So I'm going to make a little cut just on one side, on the underside. Just basically a score mark. And now I'm just going to bend them back all the way onto itself. And then that should hold it in a nice position. And it does. So now you know the drill. Glob of hot glue, stick it, let it dry, and then reinforce it with some super glue gel. Alright, and just as before, now we've got to go in between here with this bone between the shoulder and this part of his arm, but the angle we have this on right there, the bone extends out further. So we're going to do it in reverse order as last time and do the shoulder portion first, and then that way we can just kind of lift this part up and get it where we want it. And as usual, the tricky part will always just be trying to hold it all together. And now that that's dry and I backed it up with the super glue, we should just be able to pick this up and then just rest it right there and hit it with the glue. Alright, now I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side. Now I'll just address his leg joints. Now we'll move on to Speak No Evil. All the same processes as before. We'll go ahead and make him some leg joints, and we'll lop off the arms. And we're going to do something a little different to the Speak No Evil. I just lopped off the bottom portion of the arm, but I'm going to leave this top part attached, and I'm just going to bend it upward until it's pretty much facing the sky, maybe even just a little bit beyond. So that way when we let it go, it wants to stick out like that. So that way we can glue the hand to the mouth and then just pull it out and make that connection right there. I'm going to go ahead and bend back this hand just slightly so it's on a little bit of an angle. And then a glob of glue. And then just connect the two and then hit it with some more glue. Alright, now we're going to do the same procedure for the other side, except of course this time we're going to overlap this hand over the other. To address some of the lumpiness of the super glue, I'm just going to use one of the twist ties that these guys were held onto the paper backing with and just kind of smooth it out. And now I'm going to go back, and in the same order that I glued all these together, I'm going to go through here and just try to get rid of some of these strings that are coming off all over the place. Maybe use the razor knife from time to time just to kind of cut off any excess glue chunks that are there. And get all these cleaned up and ready for paint. I'm not a real big fan of this kind of tannish and brown theme we got going on here. I'm going to start off by basing all these guys out with black, and I'm just going to use an acrylic and a brush. Alright, I'm going to let this top half dry so that way I can go back and handle this side without getting the paint all over me while I do the bottom side. But while that's drying, I'll just go ahead and do the top halves of the other two. Now I'll just let these guys dry and then come back and do the bottom half. Alright, now that these are dry, I'm going to put a little white acrylic out here. I'm going to mix in from over my previous pile of black, just a little bit of black. Just looking for a nice gray. Alright, now I'm going to try to get most of the paint out of the brush. I'm going to go and dry brush over this to bring out all the highlights and everything. The look I'm kind of going for here is maybe they're like made out of stone or something like that. I just wanted them to look a little more unnatural and not so organic as that tan bone color that they came with. If you get a little too much paint on one particular area, you can always just kind of take your finger and kind of try to subdue it a little bit. Now to kind of try and make these stand out just a little better, I'm going to do one last step, and I'm just going to wipe the gray off of here. I'm going to put just a touch more of the straight white out. And go into that. I'm just going to have a little bit of gray that's left on my brush, just so it's not completely stark white. I'm going to try to get as much of that out as I can. And then just go in and very lightly touch over the areas I want to stand out the most, like the rib cage and the highlights on the face. Make sure the teeth are showing. Especially get this spinal cord, since that's got a lot of detail there. And then just kind of hit over the rest of it here and there. And that's about all there is to it. You could always make some sort of a base for them to actually be mounted to sit on, to where you could just move that around. That way you don't have to worry about them falling over or anything. You could use like a block of wood or some sort of brick, or just anything that you think would be cool that you can come up with. You could stick them on a tree branch, you know, pretty much anything. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that notification bell too, so that way YouTube will let you know when I have a new video posted. And until next time, stay creepy.